I'm talking to Amy Stewart, who's the author of this cool book called Wicked Bugs. How's it going?
It's going good.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so excited about this book. I read Wicked Plants and loved it. As you know, I reviewed it on Boing Boing, and it was a
Yeah.
fantastic book. And it I think really resonated with people because a lot of people. It was a really well received book, wasn't it? It sold a lot of copies.
Yeah, I think, people like the dark side. And it's sort of the anti-garden book and the anti-plant lovers book because it was about such desperately awful, devious, terrible plants. And yeah, I think people got into that. It really spurred. I mean, I planted a poison garden at my house, and now
Hmm.
all these botanical gardens are doing it. So, like the idea has sort of caught on that we can have a little bit of fun with the evildoers
Oh,
in
that's
the
cool.
plant.
I didn't know. Is that a thing that people do now? Is plant like poisonous gardens?
Yeah, that's a thing. I mean, it's not like I invented it. There
Hmm.
are poison gardens in Europe that are centuries old, but it's a thing people are doing more and more. Yeah.
That's so cool. Are there any like medicinal uses for it, or is it just like a thing to do because it's cool to have horribly poisonous plants in your yard?
Yeah, I think it's more like it just ties into that whole goth thing, you know. I mean, when I
Yeah.
did my poison garden, there were tombstones in it and there were skulls in it, and it was just very creepy and dark and weird. And
Wow.
that's a fun thing to do,
Yeah.
in a garden.
What kind of
Yeah.
plants did you have growing in it?
Well, I have planted castor bean, which is, like the most deadly poison the plant kingdom makes is in
Mm-hmm.
castor bean, ricin,
Mm-hmm.
and of course tobacco,
Mm-hmm.
very wicked plant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, foxglove. I mean, I live in Humboldt County, Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was about, what can I grow that can actually live in that climate, which is not everything. If I
Mm-hmm.
was in Southern California, I'd be able to grow pretty much every plant in the book. But
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I'm
yeah,
down here in LA, so maybe I can grow my own poison garden.
you can do it.
Sounds
Yes.
fun. Yeah. So, you have a new book out, Wicked
Yes.
Bugs, and
Wicked bugs.
it's a very nice companion to Wicked Plants. Same size, same designer.
Uh-huh.
It's red. The other Wicked Plants was green, so they're
Right.
complementary colors, and it's just a wonderful little book. And what I thought it would be fun to do is I'll just ask you about your opinion of certain kinds of bugs, like what is the most painful bug that you came across in your research?
The most painful bug. So there's a very painful hornet. The Asian giant hornet is the largest. In fact, I have one. Do you want to see it?
Oh, yeah.
Actually, have I have these bugs in lucite that have been traveling around in my suitcase with me.
Oh,
So
wow. That's huge.
yeah, it's quite large. This is the Asian giant hornet, and it's also very aggressive. So it really goes after prey. And mostly what it's going after is honeybees, Japanese honeybees. But its sting is just horrific. So it's said to be one of the worst stings you can have. There's another one, there's an ant called a bullet ant. And it's called a bullet ant because it's supposed to feel like you've been shot. I mean, people have actually described it as being so painful as it feels like a gunshot wound. So there
Wow.
are some very painful
Is
ones.
it the formic acid? Like, or does it have something else in it that hurts so bad?
With a lot of these, it's a real cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of neurotoxins and yeah, things like formic acid, which ants have.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a pretty nasty, potent little brew, and also just other compounds that people are allergic to. So sometimes people will have this real full body allergic reaction as
Mm-hmm.
well to
How about the most disgusting bug?
them. Most disgusting, I guess I would have to say the parasites.
Mm-hmm.
So you should know that when I say bug, I'm using the commoners, sort of the civilian use of the word bug, not the scientific
Mm-hmm.
use. So there are worms in the book, and there are spiders, and there are other things that are not insects with sucking and piercing mouth parts, which is
Mm-hmm.
technically what a bug is. So I think the most disgusting ones have to be the parasites, parasitic worms like the guinea worm, for instance,
Hmm.
which can live inside people for a few years, but in order to lay eggs and reproduce, they sort of like to exit the human body a little bit and get into some water because they lay their eggs in water.
Hmm.
So they actually will leave the body anywhere. They'll make a little sore on your feet, on your legs, just anywhere she feels like getting out, she starts getting out. And it's very painful, and it's this real burning kind of pain. So people are tempted to get in water. They're tempted to go run into a lake or a river, which is exactly what she wants because that lets her,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because that lets her lay eggs. But
Yeah.
totally disgusting because these worms come out of your body over kind of a long period of time, and it's a gross, awful thing to live with.
I've also heard of a bug called the bot fly that seems kind of gross
Yeah,
too. Doesn't it?
maggots.
Yeah, yeah. Maggots erupt from your scalp, is it, or just
That's
wherever?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are many species of flies that like to lay their eggs in living tissue.
Hmm.
So if you have a wound, they might find their way there, or just make a little bite and leave a place to lay their eggs. So yeah, bot flies come out of people's scalp. I just met a woman actually last night who had one come out of her leg. She had wandered away from a campsite in Peru to go to the bathroom, and so it actually bit her pretty high up near her hip.
Oh my
And
God.
several days later, she feels this little thing moving around under the skin.
Oh,
Not
um,
good.
no,
Yeah.
not good at all.
Yeah.
So, how about a dangerous bug? What would be the most
Well,
dangerous?
I think so you can look at dangerous in a couple of ways. You can look at dangerous just in terms of really nasty venom that does more than just hurt, that can actually, cause organ damage. And I have all these visual aids.
Oh,
I've been
good.
picking up bugs as I go, actually. So let me show you here in this box. I got to get the glare off of it a little
Hmm.
bit and get it close so you
I
can
see like a
see it.
scorpion type. Is
And
that a,
yeah, you can see that nasty little scorpion. And it's not actually a very big scorpion, but there are species of scorpions living even in the southwestern United States and definitely in Mexico that could sting a small child badly enough to actually be fatal. An adult can probably handle the venom, but a
hmm.
little kid can't. And so it's a very scary thing. And they've actually developed just recently, like just in the last few years, started to develop some anti-venoms, which is a very big deal in a place like Phoenix, that you can actually go to the hospital and have the
Hmm.
option of taking an anti-venom because that can be pretty bad.
Hmm. Um,
So,
is it similar to rattlesnake toxin? Do you know?
um, well, I don't know that much about rattlesnake
Hmm.
venom. Have you had rattlesnake experiences yourself?
I've never been bitten by one, but growing up in Colorado and being in Southern California, I've come across them on a half dozen occasions.
Right, right.
And I think
Yeah.
they're
Well,
hemo there's hemotoxins and neurotoxins. Are those the two main kinds of?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people very often have liver failure. It can be
Hmm.
really catastrophic. It can be a really nasty poison.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
how about uh, the most interesting bug? I'll just say right now, the most interesting one to me is the bombardier beetle. I think that's a
Oh,
fascinating.
yeah. And so, this was a tricky one for me to include because my definition of wicked was that it had to be harmful to us, to people.
Hmm.
Like, it's not enough if it kills other bugs or if it eats plants. I mean, who cares? That's just a bug being a bug.
Hmm.
And of course, I was always looking for like I always wanted to know like who has it killed, right? Like, is there a historical figure? Is there a famous person?
Hmm.
Was there a serious murder? So for me, it was all really about the stories. But so the bombardier beetle was a little different. I just felt like I had to include it because it was such a weird mechanism. So the bombardier beetle ejects a fluid that is like the strongest vinegar in the world. So it's sort of a super strong vinegar, and it has this artillery mechanism that allows it to fire in any direction. And it's actually a pretty sophisticated little piece of machinery that allows it to fire at its enemies. Now, its enemies are just other bugs. So
Mm-hmm.
only an entomologist who's like working in close quarters with one of these things would
Mm-hmm.
actually get hurt by one. So they don't really pose a threat to us, but they're just really fascinating. And
Yeah.
there actually is a story involving a famous person, kind of, in that Charles Darwin, there's this famous story about when he was young and he was out beetle hunting, and he picked one of these up, and he had a beetle in each hand, and then he found another one. So he put it in his mouth just for safekeeping for a minute. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be really dedicated to beetle collecting if you want to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And it sprayed this noxious fluid. So, that was probably a bombardier beetle. And weirdly, now people use the biochemistry of the bombardier beetle to try to discredit Darwin's theory of evolution. They say that the bombardier beetle is too complex to have evolved. It had to have been created spontaneously by a creator,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is not true, and really is a misunderstanding
Uh-huh.
of the biochemistry of the bombardier beetle. But it's interesting nonetheless that this is one of those things used by creationists to
Yeah.
talk about
Isn't
it.
it? I remember, maybe this is incorrect, but the bombardier beetle also the fluid that it squirts out is high temperature too, isn't it? Like it's actually hot.
Yes, because it creates a little chemical reaction right before it fires it. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually has a separate chamber where it mixes it with a catalyst, and pressure builds up that allows it to fire it at this really rapid, fast rate.
It's incredible.
I know, it's a crazy bug.
Yeah. So, going back to wicked plants, what inspired you to start like investigating wicked life forms on Earth? What was it? Was there an incident that happened to you, or what was it?
Well, yeah, kind of. So before that, I had written this book about the cut flower business called Flower Confidential, and I was
Mm-hmm.
interviewing people who work in breeding flowers for the industry. And when you hang out with botanists and plant breeders and hybridizers, you find out that they all have weird plant collections. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of where you go. Like if you have a life about plants, you do sort of go to the dark side eventually. You get into things that are subversive or immoral or poisonous or just or illegal, something you're kind of not supposed to have.
Uh-huh.
And so everyone wanted to show me their weird, awful, cool plant that they have that's
Mm-hmm.
like not part of their work, but it's what they're fascinated with. So I just kept running into them, and I just started making a list. Like, okay, Socrates was killed by a plant. It turns out Abraham Lincoln's mother was killed by a plant. So I had all of these notorious people, and I just thought it would be fun to tell the stories. Like, the world did not need another reference book,
Mm-hmm.
about poisonous plants or
Mm-hmm.
venomous insects. But nobody had really dug out those stories. And so that was the thing that I thought would be fun and kind of different to do and more suited to my temperament. I mean, I kind of like the drama and the conflict and the characters and the suspense in it all.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just plants that are illegal, obviously, like some people grow pot.
Right.
There was a great article in Harper's about 10 years ago about a guy who grew poppies to make poppy tea. And
Michael Pollan wrote that.
oh, was that him who wrote
That
that?
was
Was it?
Michael
Oh my
Pollan.
God! Oh
Yeah,
my God! That's a great article, wasn't it?
it was. It
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, opium poppies are every bit as illegal as marijuana is, but the seeds are legal because we use them to make poppy seed muffins and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So because of that, seed companies sell them to gardeners.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you are breaking the law if you grow opium poppies just as much as if you're growing, any other like drug plant.
So I imagine, though, I mean, people grow these. I imagine the cultivating a plant that could be used to make heroin. That's like a serious felony, and people don't even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's just not at all enforced. I mean, I live in Humboldt County, which is like the center of marijuana
Mm-hmm.
cultivation in California. And I did a little story one time on opium poppies, and I actually called the local police department and said, do you enforce this? Would you ever enforce it? If I was growing opium poppies in my front yard, would you even slow down? And
Hmm.
they were like, look, we have so many more important things to worry about than opium poppies. And our officers wouldn't know a poppy from a petunia. They don't even know what it looks like. So there have been a few cases of people who were growing big fields of it
Hmm.
in the United States getting busted for that, but
Hmm.
that even that is more about intent. I mean, you can be growing a big field of it because you think they're pretty. So
Sure,
yeah.
sure. What about people growing coca plants? Do you know that if anyone's done that?
People have done that. And in fact, one of the things that sparked my interest in wicked plants was a botanist at a university who said that he had heard that the students were growing it. It's called Erythroxylum coca, and
Hmm.
it's a little bush, a little shrub from Latin America. And he was really worried about that because, he wasn't sure that the kids even knew what they had. And it turns
Hmm.
out that they were not growing Erythroxylum. They were growing another poisonous plant that would be really dangerous to chew on in the way that you traditionally use coca. So, but
Wow.
people do. It's a tropical plant, so it's kind of
Hmm.
hard to grow. It's not something you can put in your backyard in your tomato
Hmm.
patch, but
Hmm.
it exists. A few conservatories have it, usually not labeled. Usually they don't make a big deal about it, but
Uh-huh.
few botanical gardens have it somewhere in their collection.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Very interesting. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so, since you focused on these books about evil things in the world, have they made you more frightened of the world, or more grateful that you have not been a victim of these things?
I think that we have to appreciate the power of nature. I mean, you and I both live on the West Coast, and we both know, for instance, that the ocean has a lot of power.
Hmm.
Certainly up in Northern California, we have these sleeper waves that come along and pull people out to sea, and it
Hmm.
happens every year. So it's like I love the ocean, and I do not turn my back on the ocean. And I
Hmm.
think the same is true of plants and bugs, that we just have to respect the fact that they have a lot of power and that they don't always have our best interests at heart. Like the world is not all about us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it hasn't made me more afraid. I have, with the bugs, I have sort of become the person that you don't want to invite on a tropical vacation. Like, I have a million stories about innocent tourists getting like stung by an exotic caterpillar or a scorpion, or having some awful run-in while at a resort in Brazil or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I went to Mexico with some friends, and all I could think about were the assassin bugs running back and forth across the floor, and whether or not they were transmitting Chagas disease.
What is
So
that? What is
I've
Chagas
got a
disease?
little weird in that way. Well, Chagas disease is a very nasty disease that we didn't know anything about until the early 20th century. And even though it existed before then, it was mostly in the jungles in Latin America. And the assassin bug was just transmitting it back and forth between, I don't know, bats and rodents and stuff like that. And it wasn't until humans, mostly like, Europeans and Americans, started pushing into the jungle and cutting it down to plant plantations, like banana plantations and stuff like that, that it got to know humans and started transmitting this disease among humans.
Hmm.
But anyway, it's a really horrible, nasty disease, and it is transmitted by assassin bugs, and it is found in many places in Latin America and in Mexico. So I'm kind of creeped out by that one.
Yikes. I'm headed to Costa Rica in a couple of months. Is there anything I need to be afraid of?
I mean, so here's the thing, and people kind of roll their eyes when I say this, but I think a few precautions are in order.
Hmm.
So, like with the plants, I tell people wear gloves in the garden. If you get a
Hmm.
cut or a scrape, go inside and clean it up real quick and put a band aid on it. And if you get anything in your eye, there are plant saps that can really cause permanent eye damage. Like, don't mess around with that stuff. If you think
Wow.
you've got serious eye
Hmm.
damage, go down to urgent care and get it washed out at one of
Hmm.
those things that they have. And the same is true of the bugs. Like, I think it's a good idea to check and see if the CDC is recommending any vaccines or any,
Hmm.
prophylactic medicines. I mean, I was in
Hmm.
Ecuador a couple of years ago, and I got a round of shots before I went. And it's a good time to just love bug spray. I mean, if you want to be
Mm-hmm.
chemical free the rest of the time, great, but load up on the bug spray. And there's also there's this insect repellent clothing. I don't know if you've seen this stuff.
Mm-mm.
It's got it's called something like Insect Shield, and it's got these natural they're pyrethrins, so it's sort of this chrysanthemum derived
Mm-hmm.
insecticide embedded in the clothing that it doesn't get on your skin because of the way it's woven into the clothes. But it can keep mosquitoes off and stuff like that. And they even make little bandanas that you can keep around your neck.
Oh, that
And
sounds cool.
I know, and I think that kind of stuff is actually worthwhile. I think a few little precautions. Don't walk around barefoot. One
Mm-hmm.
word of advice. And oh, and here's another thing for traveling. This is actually a good thing to know, and it's something that they're always teaching our troops when they have to go, like to Southeast Asia or to the Middle East. There's this little phrase: "Brush, don't crush." So the idea is, if you get bitten by a bug, we tend to want to smack it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really, don't do that. Either blow it off your arm or brush it off, because if you crush it, then you risk getting some venom or an infectious parasite or something nasty like that, and really
Mm.
working its into your skin, which is what you
Mm-hmm.
don't.
Okay, well, that's good advice. Well, Amy, thanks a lot. This has been educational and entertaining.
I know, and probably terrifying. I'm telling you, I'm like the person you do not want to talk to before you go on vacation, and you just did.
Oh, no,
Well,
that's
thank
okay.
you.
Good advice. Thanks so much, and good luck with your book.
Thanks a lot.